You're listening to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. During the next hour, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catholic Chicago. We are streaming on our YouTube channel, Catholic Chicago, and you can always listen to our programs on 750 AM, WNDZ, weekdays from 8 to 9 a.m. I'm Cliff Barber, the director of the Black Catholic Initiative for the Archdiocese of Chicago. Our topic today is one that is top of mind these days for all of us in Chicago: violence. Behind the beautiful skyline and the Lollapalooza Film Festival is the underbelly of violence and the killing, which has become a cancer in our city, a scourge that we can't look away from. We're fortunate to have as our guest today Father Larry Dowling, who is the pastor at St. Agatha Parish on the west side. He's been at the forefront of many social justice efforts in the fight against racism and violence. So welcome, Father Larry.
Great to be with you, Cliff. Thanks.
Father Larry, can I ask you one question? You've been a resident of Chicago for a long time. You've been a priest for a long time, a pastor for a long time. What do you think is at the source of, why are we seeing so much violence in the city now?
I think, we've always seen violence of one sort or another, but I think we're seeing it a lot to do with just again the deep, I think, despair and the struggles within the Black community in general, and the disinvestment over the years. But then COVID has amplified that in so many different ways. With so many families secluded, with so many individuals without jobs, and just. I think lots of despair, lots of anger, and all of that is getting expressed. I think especially through the gun violence. It happens in other forms of violence as well within the home, but definitely we see it most visibly on the streets with the gun violence.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've been a priest for how long?
For 30 years this year.
30 years. You're a resident of Chicago. You grew up in Chicago?
I did not. I grew up in Central Illinois. I moved to Chicago out of college, but have been in Chicago for about 40 years now.
And when you became a newly minted priest, did you ever imagine you'd be in a parish on the west side in the middle of the epicenter of violence in Chicago?
I did not imagine that. I originally thought that I would one day minister within the city, mm-hmm. But St. Agatha, not necessarily. So.
Mm-hmm. And what have you observed over that time? Because obviously you started out in other parts of the city. What's been at the heart of the change? Because obviously there's been a change. I grew up in Chicago years mm-hmm. ago. It wasn't as bad as this. What's happened in our families, in our neighborhoods, that's led to where we are today?
Cliff, there's generations of disinvestment in communities like North Lawndale. Since the '68 riots, there's just been really no strong investment from the city or other sources in terms of helping families in the community. For a community that was prior to the '68 riots had already been devastated by the housing industry and contract buying, where probably $5 billion in equity was lost by the Black community because mm-hmm. of the what were legal at the time practices of the real estate industry, but were later proved to be illegal. And coupled with that, over the years, has been the introduction of drugs into the community to really, I think, to control the community, and consequently with the war on drugs, which really was a war on the Black community, to end up devastating families in the community. Separating fathers from their children because of incarceration, mm-hmm. With just even the minimal amount of involvement in the drug mm-hmm. industry.
Mm-hmm. And Father, do you mm-hmm. think it's possible to end violence in Chicago?
can never end violence totally. That's unfortunately that's part of I think our human condition. I think there are ways to get at to gun violence. I think there are ways to get at the violence that happens in the homes. Again, for lots of different reasons. Our communities are devastated by, the last I was able to kind of count was 14 areas of trauma that impact our families and our community. From direct violence that happens to the lack of accessible housing, livable housing, to just so many different forces of trauma that are out there, and so. There's that piece, and then we have this generational problem of parents who, were subject to a poor educational system. We're subject to, parents who, didn't exactly were able to or weren't able to reach out to them and support them and love them in the way they needed to, and so we have this generational. Problem as well of families, where, as I've often said to people in the community. We have every parent, I believe, really wants to do the best by their children. I really, in my heart of hearts, I believe that very strongly. The problem in a community like North Lawndale is there are a lot of parents that don't know what that looks like and don't know what that feels like. And so, especially as church, it's our task, it's our responsibility, I believe, to help families, particularly whole families in the community, where there is violence within the home. Where they experience the trauma of violence external to the home, to help them to see what's possible, and also to feel that love, that sacrifice from a faith community like St. Agatha.
Sure. Now, you mentioned, obviously, you're a Catholic priest, fellow Larry, and we're part of the Catholic Church. We're speaking here. But what does our faith say about both the reasons for why we are where we are and also, too, what the solutions are?
Well, our faith, I think, says very clearly that we all need to be involved in the solution to this, and some of that I think is looking internally. I mean, for me as a white Catholic priest in the middle of the Black community, and having the privilege to serve in the Black community, and having learned from so much about from the spirituality of the Black community that has enriched me so much, I think it's coming to understand that all of us have a role, and the ways that we exercise that, are going to be, are important. I mean, we can put money into communities, we can do all that kind of stuff, but we also need to get to know the people in the community. We also need to relate, in kinship, with people, to understand, the struggles that they have and the unique struggles that Black people have because of, over 400 years of, just consistent, policies and laws and practices that have really kept Black people, unfortunately, in this really devastating state, and really put especially Black families, I think, at risk.
I think that's right. Brian Stevenson, in his book and now the movie Just Mercy, he said one of the things he said is all of us need to be more proximate to the problems that we face. And I wonder, for yourself, Father Larry, as a priest, obviously you're very proximate, being at St. Agatha right there on the west side, but how you see proximity helping, and give us some examples of where you've seen your own eyes opened as a priest, but also too where you've seen those of other faithful, the people of God at St. Agatha, or others who work with you, how you've seen their eyes opened by proximity.
Sure. I mean, the proximity, that's the practice of Jesus, right? He was always about relationship, about being with people. And we don't, yes, we meet Jesus in church, but we meet Jesus most visibly out in the community, with the people, and when we're isolated from people who don't look like us or whatever, that prevents us from really getting to know and understand the real issues. So, but the proximity piece is huge, and as a Catholic Church, we do great work, through Catholic Charities and outreach, in terms of helping people meet basic needs. The proximity issue is, for me, that is key for us at the local parish. Is how do we create spaces where people not only are where the immediate needs are met, but in some way are empowered and uplifted. Catholic Campaigning for Human Development does that to a good degree, but it's limited, and so there need to be local. The focus on empowerment and actually meeting people where they're at, and actually lifting each other up together, if you will, is I think has to happen in proximity to the people and in relationship to the people. It's the heart of Pope Francis's focus on mercy. Is we need to be present. We need to. And the best way it was said to me by a spiritual director of mine is we need to get under each other's skin. We need to get to know each other. We need to understand, the joys and struggles and the hurts and pains. Realize there's a lot of commonalities, but there's also a lot of differences. And then from the cultural perspective, there's differences, but there's a richness that we can draw from really that building of proximate relationships.
So Father, I sit in great admiration of the work you do there at St. Agatha's, but obviously you're talking about proximity, but it must be very difficult. You are in proximity, you're right in the epicenter of this, of the violence in our city. How does that affect you personally, and how do you deal with that personally and kind of wash it through so that you're able to keep yourself sane and able to carry on working the mission?
It's a very good question, Cliff, because I do think, and I worry about this for people in the community, is that the violence becomes sort of kind of matter of fact. And to be honest, I've had moments where I've heard gunshots and say, oh, there's some more gunshots. And it bothers me that I take that so lightly at times. But it is the reality. For me, it really is about again, being present to people. And again, we can listen to this, the gunshots, we can listen to that. But when you actually get out and be present to people who are hurting. Last week, was with, a number of people at a local barber shop where, a couple of guys had gone in en masse, shot a young man in the chair who was the target, but ended up shooting the barber, 50 years old, 8 children. And just a very beloved person in the community, but was out there with a couple of the other pastors from the community, and just to be present to people and hold them and just try to comfort them and be present to them and I mean, you can't make sense of this stuff, but presence has a power to it, and when I see that. That hurt and that pain, definitely, I feel it, and I weep at it, and I struggle with it. But it also, because I'm a man of faith, is and a person of faith is that it really causes me to say, okay, in what way do I need to go deeper to try to figure out solutions to this, to really be part of the change that God wants to happen within this community.
Sure.
And so so much of that is about relationship. It's about building relationships, and in so many ways, getting at the issue of violence on the street is really having people out on the street every day doing the relational work, building relationships with families, talking to these kids who are out there, and not just talking to them, but also offering options to them, because peace has a price, if you will.
Right.
And so if we're asking our youth to put down their guns, we need to offer them something, in return, jobs, education, other activities, those sorts of things. And so the catch 22, if you will, in communities like ours on the west side is we need the man and woman power to be out on the street, people with street cred, if you will, who've been there, who've gotten their lives together, who now are trying to make positive change in the community, who can be out there every day working with these youth. And then, though, we have to have the things to offer them.
So that's wonderful. What a great testimony there. We're going to have a break here, Father Larry, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what gives you hope, and then also talk about what's happening specifically in North Lawndale, where you are.
Great, thanks.
Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Cliff Barber with the Black Catholic Initiative of the Archdiocese of Chicago. I'm here speaking with Father Larry Dolling, our guest from St. Agatha Parish on the west side. We've been talking the first bit of the segment of this about what's actually happening, violence kind of generally in the city of Chicago. We ended by talking a little bit about how that impacts you, Father Larry, personally, and what gives you hope in your work. But obviously this is not just Chicago. We've attracted a lot of attention across the nation and the world, actually for many years. And just recently I know that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, was here. I know that the commissioner, police commissioner, was in Washington, and now he's back here again, and he was part of a peace walk recently. We're going to listen here just to a segment from that peace walk and from the visit of the Attorney General. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about your role in that and more generally in North Lawndale.
Okay.
This week, the nation's top law enforcement official in town to announce the launch of strike forces. The Attorney General's plans will target illegal guns and those who traffic them into Chicago, giving police the ability to file federal charges more often. Superintendent Brown says those conversations are going well.
We feel very positive about the strike force. We had follow-up conversations. We're moving forward with our gun trafficking team.
Interesting, obviously, we've known for years that Chicago gets attention of the world. I was traveling in Russia, and I was in a cab, and someone told me they thought of Chicago and thought of Michael Jordan, and they thought of violence. And I thought, well, first of all, I'm happy you know Chicago, but I'm sad that we're on the map for at least the second of those. Michael Jordan, that's fine.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But do you think this is it's appropriate that we should be in the spotlight for the violence as opposed to any other city? Or
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the statistics across the board and across the country, we are not unique. There are many other cities that are focusing, or are, subject to, these same forces within communities of again, the devastation and disinvestment, and then, those on the outside that, that take advantage of that by, introducing drugs and guns into the community, illegal guns into the community. So
there's some who will say that these are Photoshop opportunities. People come through here and then they leave, but then the same thing is happening. Do you think that the kind of the peace walk and the appearance of the police commissioner with all of his captains there, as well as Merrick Garland, do you feel like all of that is going to lead to something positive?
I struggle, Cliff, with I mean, I can appreciate marches. People need that outlet to be able to do that. And I want to say we have a great relationship with both the 10th and 11th District in North Lawndale, who are really trying to build strong relationships within the community. The main thing that we need to be doing is to be, again, as I said earlier, be out on the streets, talking to these youth, talking to the families, that have been hurt by the violence, and simply to try to be present to them. And if we're gonna march, I think we need to march, in terms of a willingness for people to go door to door. Knocking on doors, giving out information, talking to the young people in the homes, and just simply trying to start those relationships, and then make the commitment over time to to that continuation of that, to be out there every day or a few times a week to relate and to build that sense of trust. The intent of the march that we had that Friday was to actually do that. And unfortunately, it got turned into this thing with the superintendent,
right,
and all of that, and there were a handful of us walking down the sidewalk talking to families, but most of the crowd was walking down the center of the boulevard, to the next location. There were a number of speeches and all that, and again, all of that is well and good, but the bottom line is we've got to get to the people that are directly affected by this. I would say of those who marched, less than 1% of the people there were actually neighbors.
Right.
And so, which says a lot. And so, not to discount the role of the police, not to discount,
Sure.
all of that. They're very important in the community. But we need people on the street. We need people working every day out there. And we need, as I said earlier, the resources to offer these families and these youth.
There was a line from a song I liked in the 1980s. It was by Sting, and it was related to another a crisis in the world. But it said the line was "Too many cameras and not enough food." And this last few weeks we've been talking about the bread of life in the Gospels, and we know that Jesus offered to many people both types of bread. Our gospel reading last week was about the multiplication of the loaves, but obviously there is what the essence of this is the spiritual food, and ultimately that's as Catholic Christians we want people to have that bread of life, but we also know that we have to give people the real bread as well. And what you're saying is that aspect of going out is one. It's fine to be activist. It's fine to be protesting, but we also need to give, first of all, people need maybe the first order bread, the real bread, and then they need the bread of life ultimately, and we have to accompany people. I know we've been talking about that, is how do we accompany people, first by helping them with their first order trauma, but then bringing them into the real relationship with Jesus, which can be the longing.
And I would definitely echo that, Cliff. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, I've been particularly focusing on that the sense of the bread of life. Obviously Jesus. But when we talk about daily bread in the Lord's Prayer, I mean, a lot of people just kind of say, okay, we're praying for food. It's like, but daily bread, I mean, it's a unique term in the Scriptures that actually is much deeper than just food. It's about what happens when we sit down and get to know each other and break bread together and all that. So daily bread for me, and I always have to remind people of this, is the relationships that God gives us, the relationships we need in our lives, to enable us to, deal with the latter part of the Lord's Prayer, which is, to forgive others and reconcile and to avoid evil and all those sorts of things. So the other image that was strong for me this year in sort of the multiplication of loaves was I focused on the young boy who brought the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Assume that was uninvited, that he just heard. He saw something in Jesus and wanted to offer the small gifts that he had, to offer. And I really raised that up in the community just to say, we have young people in this community who have gifts to offer. But they need to see in us, that Spirit of Jesus that, is willing to help them to do remarkable things with those gifts, and to believe that. I mean, Jesus' disciples doubted that he could do anything, but this young boy, saw the potential, that Jesus, and felt in his heart that Jesus could do something with this, and so offered probably the only food he had, to say, here, use this.
Right.
And so, so again, it's how do we get across to, and I say this over and over again, we say that the youth are our future, but I always have to nuance and say they're also our present. We've got to meet them where they're at. There are things we can learn from our youth. I've learned a lot from youth in the community, about their hopes and dreams and their struggles and all that. And which challenges me to say, how do I help address that? How do we as a parish, help to address that? And so it really is that focus. But yeah, I mean, the Eucharist is central to to my own identity and how we are that daily bread for one another. In what ways could we do that?
Well, Larry, we've been talking so much about accompanying people here. And, one of the things that's interesting, I think we probably have a lot of listeners who read the papers every day, and it is frustrating to see the drumbeat of news that we all see. And sometimes there's a feeling of helplessness. I think most of us are horrified at what we read. The stories really touch our hearts, but then we put the paper down. And what we spoke about in the first half of this was being proximate to the problem, being proximate with people, also accompanying people. As we just talked about, Jesus did that all the time. He accompanied his 3 years of ministry. He always was there present with people. He accompanied them. He went heart by heart in his healing, and we're called to do the same thing. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about just what people can do, because I think I know for me, a lot of the frustration comes from I see this, I see maybe inaction over here, it's the government, it's this, but then what can I do? Can you help us understand from your point of view as someone who has to kind of mobilize people to do this work on the West Side, what people can actually do, how they can get involved?
Sure. So, I think there's a number of avenues, Cliff, that people can tie into, in terms of, I hate to always look to money as the solution, but money is key in this. Now, money's from individuals. Anybody that can send $1 million our way, I can hire 10 people to be out there every day on the street working with these young people. So, but the reality is that we need people to, who have some expertise, who have some professional expertise, to be willing to, if we have a youth that identifies themselves, I have an interest in, being a carpenter or being a lawyer, all this kind of stuff, to identify themselves and say, I'm willing to help, I'm willing to help mentor a youth to do that. We're trying to build out the housing, ownership in the area, and so we're working with, Mary Seat of Wisdom, with the Build Each Other Up project that they have, where they're trying to, rehab homes in the area and then sell them to parishioners or local residents. So again, to increase that home ownership and the ability for families to build equity and pass that equity on to future generations.
No, I think it was it last week or a few weeks ago where there were some young people who came to do a mural was it at your parish or near your parish?
Yes. So St. Agatha hosts what is called the READY program that works with probably the highest risk young men in the community who are identified, invited into 5 days a week. They come. They spend the morning in doing group work, doing life skills things. They go out in the afternoon and work and learn different skills. By the end of 12 months, they are then able to move away from the gang culture, move away from the other forces working against them, and actually be earning a living in a legitimate way. Last week was a gathering of the men in that program, along with their families, and there were a number of projects that were involved. But we hosted it at St. Agatha because we are one of the ready sites, and one of the things that we offered them was to do a mural on the back wall of the church.
Beautiful.
And so we had the men in the Ready program, we had the staff, we had the family members, and we had about 15 police officers out there actually joining in to help paint as well. So it was all of these people who oftentimes are at odds with each other, actually working together to create this beautiful mural.
Father Larry, I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with us here. You told some heartfelt stories there, and I just such an admiration of your ministry and the ministry of your parish. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to thank everyone, our audience, for joining us today on Chicago Catholic. Remember, you can watch our original Catholic programming every day on WNDZ, 7:50 a.m. from 8 until 9 a.m. And we are streaming whenever you like on our YouTube channel, Catholic Chicago. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, sir.